This video is about David Hicks. He's an Australian held in Guantanamo Bay, and he's been there for 5 years without trial or charges, like most of the people in there. And the other day, today is Tuesday, so on Sunday night, 60 Minutes had a story on David Hicks, and they were showing his conditions, and they talked to both sides, and they spoke to his lawyer, a US military lawyer, Maury, and he was saying how Hicks shouldn't be in there, that he was quite happy for Hicks to play with his children, that he was no threat to anybody. And it did show both sides, and the other side was saying that he was a danger, and he did this and he did that and all the rest, but yet they have not put one charge against him yet. This really pisses me off, this story, because to hold somebody like that, to me, is inhumane. 5 years, no charges, absolutely ridiculous. If they have something against him, charge him. Get this out of the way. But to hold somebody without charging for 5 years in these conditions is absolutely... And the other thing is, they would not let the reporters talk to him. Why not? That in itself is... makes me wonder. But I was reading the paper today, the Melbourne Age, and this is Tuesday, March the 6th, 2007, and I often think about Hicks, and I was reading this article by Rob Holes, and he put it more eloquently than I ever could. What he has written here is what I would like to say. The plight of David Hicks is a legal and political scandal. I can think of a few other examples in which the individual has been so betrayed by our nation's government. Australians are rightly ashamed of their treatment of a fellow citizen. They are rightly anxious and outraged about what this means to the rest of us. They should be even more outraged, however, by warnings by United States prosecuting authorities that they may be bringing charges against Major Michael Murray, Hicks's military lawyer, because he got on there and said that, he shouldn't be in there and it's inhumane to have him in there all this time. So now they've turned around and said he's not allowed to say things like this about the US, the way that he's being treated. So now they're threatening him. This is possibly simply breathtaking. Having volunteered to present Guantanamo Bay's detainees has been assigned to Hicks. Maury has advocated for the interests of clients, for justice, and for nothing else. Maury is simply doing what the Australian government should have done. Touche on that one. In my view, and in a view of countless other Australians, Maury embodies not only the finest aspects of the law as a vocation, but the finest aspects of principle of freedom and justice on which the US was built. He should have been hailed a patriot, but instead stands accused of breaching US military laws by criticising the political circus from which he is trying to save his client. Again, touche. He has simply been doing his job. He is a loyal member of the UN Marine Corps, and at no time has he criticised the proper legal process of the US military. However, he has been critical, as he should be, of the process that has been invented by the US administration to deal with Hicks and others in his situation. The travesty for Hicks and for justice is that because of his courageous, imaginative and energetic defence, Murray may now be tainted and compromised as an advocate and unable to continue to represent his client. So the one man that's standing up for Murray and doing the right thing will be taken off, and some weak-minded or brown-nosing other US lawyer will get in there and do what they say. That's my take on it, not this guy's. Continue to represent. The fate of Hicks lies now, as it always has been, in the hands of his betrayers. Having shut him off from the legal process, senior government ministers then proceeded to have their merry way with the presumption of innocence, labelling Hicks a terrorist well before charges had been laid. Attorney General Phil Ruddock, the person most responsible for the defence of the presumption of innocence and every other principle in the Australian legal system for that matter, let them. He told us that he was satisfied that the original military commission process would deliver a fair trial. Yeah, okay. Only to be rebutted by the US Supreme Court. He sat by while Hicks was denied the right of habeas corpus. He sat by while it emerged that hearsay evidence would be relied on by prosecuting authorities. When Hicks was finally charged with impervious face and unyielding gall, Ruddock and Howard spent the weekend insisting the fact that every other charge against Hicks had been dropped, with a demonstration that the process was working in. In doing so, they sidestepped the glaring contradiction that while the charge remains against Hicks is clearly retrospective and could not and would not be brought against a US citizen, these men have been telling the country with apple pie innocence that Hicks couldn't possibly be tried at home because any law that was appropriate would have to be applied retrospectively, and we couldn't possibly do that now, could we? They say comedy equals tragedy plus timing. This would be the stuff of comedy if timing hadn't been appalling for Hicks and for the hard-won principles of justice. Abandoned, exploited, betrayed, and all because it wasn't the right time. In the electoral cycle, Hicks' one hope now lies in the fact that the cycle has caught up with him. Having signed up, starred and striped biro in hand to a process that would never deliver real justice, Howard is backing out of a mess of his own making. I always wondered why Howard just didn't say, we want him back, we'll try him here, we want him, we'll investigate it. I always wondered why he never did that. Pisses me off. If ever Howard had needed more proof on top of all the evidence that has been piling up around him for the past 5 years, that Hicks is incapable of receiving a fair trial in the military commission system, the attack on Murray is it. Hicks will not receive a fair trial in the US. Mr. Howard and Mr. Ruddock will not receive a fair trial in the US, Mr. Howard and Mr. Ruddock. An Australian passport should be worth something, and I call on both of you to demand that Hicks faces charges in the system, decide to seek justice and truth, not just a political outcome. Yeah, how about that? How about we do it just because it's the right thing to do and not because you're trying to win another election, Howard? Why don't you get him back here? It's disgusting he's over there being held like that. 5 years. It's disgusting.